Nuclear attack by North Korea against the United States or its allies or partisans or partners is unacceptable and will result in the end of whatever regime were to take such an act.
This is my first video update from Nicosia, Cyprus on this Thursday afternoon. Let's talk about some news, and let's start things off with the telephone call between Xi Jinping and Elensky. Elensky finally got the call with the Chinese leader that he has been begging for, and he really has been begging for this call. And we did a video on the Duran, me and Alexander, which will be up later on today, where we analyze the phone call between China and Ukraine. And there has been an editorial on the Global Times, the Chinese state media, English language Global Times, where they talk about this phone call. There has also been an official readout from the Chinese government, which talks about this phone call. And that will all be discussed on the video that me and Alexander did on the Duran. That will be discussed in detail. So I'm just going to give you my summary of things. And the first thing I'm going to say is that the collective West mainstream media, their analysis of this call between Xi Jinping and Elensky was a complete joke. It really was cartoonish. From the Wall Street Journal to the New York Times to CNN, the Washington Post, all of them, their coverage of this call was just ridiculous. They were coming out with stuff like Xi Jinping is speaking with Elensky because he's trying to buy Russia time, or Xi Jinping is speaking with Elensky because he wants to continue to have a trade partnership with the EU, and he's afraid of losing the EU, so that's why he decided to speak with Elensky. They were just making up all kinds of just ridiculous narratives to explain this call between Xi Jinping and Elensky. The truth is that Elensky has been begging for this call. The Chinese, they finally decided to grant Elensky a phone call, not a video call, a phone call with the leader of China, with Xi Jinping. And basically, this phone call was China telling Elensky two things. The first thing was, as Ukraine, as Elensky, don't you dare stir up any trouble with Taiwan. We have, as China and Ukraine, we have a relationship, a diplomatic relationship that goes back many, many years. And we can help you. As China, we can help Ukraine, but don't you dare go along with the collective West on stirring things up with regards to Taiwan. It was kind of a warning. The first part of the call was Xi Jinping saying to Elensky, stick with the one China policy. Don't go along with what the US and the EU is doing with Taiwan. And we're all good. We're all good. That was the first part of the call. The second part of the call was Xi Jinping telling Elensky, dude, you are in deep poo-poo. Elensky, you are in deep, deep trouble. You're trying to put together this spring counteroffensive, summer, fall counteroffensive. We know you're in trouble. We know you don't have the weapons and the ammunition and the soldiers to pull this thing off. You're being pushed by the collective West to do this. You're in big trouble, but we, as China, we can help you out. We can get you out of this mess. We mediated an agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Not the same thing, because Saudi Arabia and Iran were not at war like Russia and Ukraine, but we mediated a complex geopolitical situation, and we found a solution. Give us time. It's not going to be easy, As Ukraine, you're going to have to make many concessions, but we can help you. That was the message that China passed on to Elensky. Keep in mind that China is not taking any calls from Biden. They refuse to speak to Biden. They refuse to allow Blinken to travel to Beijing for an official visit. And Xi Jinping did say that when the time is right, he will speak with Elensky. And the time is right. Because if Elensky does not take China up on its offer and get China to help out so they can come to some sort of an agreement or ceasefire, well, Zelensky's going to get pushed into a catastrophic offensive, which could spell the end for the Elensky regime, for Ukraine itself. And so that was the call. In summary, that was the phone call between Xi Jinping and Elensky. And I'm positive that, which way do I want to go? Actually, I want to go that way. And I'm positive that that Elensky, before he hung up the phone with Xi Jinping, I'm positive that Elensky said to the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, Mr. President, thank you for your offer to help. I understand I am screwed. But before I hang up phone, maybe you give me $10 billion, maybe just 10 billion. I buy a couple of homes, and then I can maybe escape from Kiev and live good life in Paris or in London. I'm sure that Elensky asked for some sort of money. I'm positive about that as well. Anyway, that was the phone call. The Chinese did say they're going to appoint an envoy for Europe who's going to examine the situation and come up with some proposals and some ideas. In essence, what the Chinese are saying is that they're going to explore a security architecture in Europe that is acceptable for everybody, for Europeans, for Russians, for Ukraine, which is basically what the Russians were saying before the special military operation. We need a new security agreement, a new security architecture in Europe. And the Chinese are basically saying, now's the time for us to provide our recommendations for this security architecture. The Americans are going to be absolutely furious. The Biden White House is going to be absolutely furious about this envoy to Europe that the Chinese are putting in place. They're never going to allow Elensky to negotiate with the Chinese or to let the Chinese negotiate some sort of an agreement. The United States, they put out a statement saying they welcome the Chinese's effort to help out in Ukraine. They put together some standard statement along those lines, but that the Biden White House is furious. They are furious because what I understand is that Elensky actually, he went through with this call without the blessing of the Biden White House, which shows that Elensky, he knows he's in trouble. He knows that he is in trouble. What the Biden White House would have wanted is they wanted Elensky to speak with Xi Jinping, but they wanted Blinken and Biden to speak with China first, because their thinking was, let's put on the diplomatic pressure and maybe the diplomatic charm with comedian Elensky, and let's try to move China away from Russia. That's what they wanted to happen. They wanted Biden to talk to Xi Jinping. Name me one president, name me one world leader that wants to be Xi Jinping. Name me one. They wanted Biden to speak with Xi Jinping. Then they wanted Blinken to travel to China. And then they wanted Elensky to speak with Xi Jinping. And they thought that this diplomatic effort would work to move China away from Russia. But instead, it looks like Elensky, because he is panicking and he is afraid, and he knows that that this offensive is going to be a dud, he called up Xi Jinping the moment the Chinese said, okay, we'll talk to you. He's like, I better talk to these guys. And it looks like the Biden White House was not clued in on this. So they're furious. They are absolutely furious from what I understand. So that's the phone call between Xi Jinping and Elensky. Elensky will not take China up on their offer to help. The U.S. will not let him get help from China for obvious reasons. And they are going to push Elensky, and they're going to push the Ukraine military to move forward with this counteroffensive, for which they are betting everything on this counteroffensive, whose goal is really not to win the conflict, whose goal is just to create enough shock and panic in the Russian military that somehow this leads to some sort of Russian military collapse and some regime change in the Kremlin. That's the purpose of this spring, fall, summer, winter, whatever offensive. And speaking about the offensive, we have a NATO commander who has come out and said that Ukraine is nearly ready to begin this offensive. The New York Times is running an article with the title, Ukraine has nearly all combat vehicles allies promised, NATO says. General Christoforou, also the top commander of U.S. forces in Europe, made the comments to the House Armed Services Committee. So let me read you some of what the New York Times is reporting and some of what this NATO commander Kavoli said. Nearly all the combat vehicles Ukraine's Western allies promised to deliver in time for Kiev's expected spring counteroffensive have arrived, NATO's top military commander said on Wednesday. Over 98% of the combat vehicles are already there, said the Officer General Christopher G. Kavoli, who is also the top commander of U.S. forces in Europe. In testimony before the House Armed Services Committee, he said, quote, I am very confident that we have delivered the materials that they need and will continue a pipeline to sustain their operations as well. General Kavoli's comments were his most expansive on the war in Ukraine and America's military support of Kiev since he assumed the European and NATO commands last year. Now, that sounds all well and good, right? 98% of everything that Elensky has asked for, Ukraine has delivered. Just another 2%, and they're ready to go with this spring, summer, fall, winter, next spring, summer, fall, winter offensive, right? That sounds all very encouraging. Ukraine is almost ready. Just 2%, and this sucker is going to get launched. Well, we get down to the last two paragraphs of this New York Times article, and this is what the NYT says. Ukraine shares few details of its operational planning with the United States, but the counteroffensive appears likely to unfold in the country's south, including along the Ukraine's coastline on the Sea of Azov, near the Russian-occupied Crimea Peninsula, American officials say. While Ukrainian officials have said that their goal is to break through dug-in Russian defenses and create a widespread collapse in Russia's army, American officials have assessed that the counteroffensive is unlikely to dramatically shift momentum in Ukraine's favor. What more do you need? What more do you need than these final two paragraphs to understand the catastrophe that awaits Elensky and the Ukraine military? Coming from the New York Times and from the United States, U.S. analysts and U.S. experts. They're hoping that they're going to create a collapse, a panic, but most likely it's going to fail. That's what they're saying. Or best case scenario, a stalemate. The New York Times, by the way, they have actually put a number on the troops that Elensky is going to send forward in this counteroffensive. They're putting the number at 48,000. 48,000 is the number. And they're going to probably concentrate them in one area. Brian Berletic has been talking about this at the New Atlas. They're going to most likely concentrate these 48,000 troops in one area, hoping to inflict enough damage so that they create some sort of widespread collapse or panic in the Russian military, which will then make its way all the way to Moscow and will lead to a regime change. That's the plan. That's the hope. That is the hope. And this is indeed a hope strategy. And Elensky knows it. If Elensky was confident about this strategy, he would not have called Xi Jinping. That's all you need to know. All right, so let's discuss, should we discuss a bit what happened to Erdogan yesterday? How strange was that? So Erdogan was giving an interview on Turkish television for Turkish media, and he got sick. He got sick and they had to cut things off. And rumors started circulating that Erdogan was suffering a mild heart attack, was suffering a severe heart attack. He was in the hospital. His family was called to go to the hospital as well because things were very, very bad. He was in critical condition. There are rumors that Putin was taken to the Kremlin in the middle of the night to get an update as to what was going on. There's video of cars traveling through Moscow, Putin's cars traveling through Moscow on the way to the Kremlin because some emergency happened. And there was just a general, an air of panic that was floating around the interwebs yesterday. But today, Turkish media, the Erdogan government and Turkish media, they have published photos of Erdogan back at work, speaking with Putin over the phone, because they were celebrating the opening of a nuclear power plant that Russia had just finished building, and so Putin attended this event, this celebration over the phone, and he spoke to Erdogan, and Erdogan also attended this celebration via video, and he spoke to Putin on the phone as well, and that's that. And you could say that maybe these photos are old or doctored or something like that, but the Kremlin and the Kremlin spokesman Peskov, they've said, look, from what we understand, everything's okay. He was ill. He spoke with Putin. Everything seems fine. I mean, I can't figure out why the Kremlin would lie about something like that, something to the point of they attended the ceremonies of this opening of this nuclear power plant, and why would they try to cover up for Erdogan, and why and how would Erdogan pull this type of cover up? I don't know, but it looks like everything is okay with Erdogan. It looks like he was just very ill. Something got to him, and he was back at work the next day. Maybe exhaustion, maybe he's tired. He is going through an election. It's a pretty rough election. My thinking there is that, there was a lot of disinfo that was spread to probably help the opposition. He had a heart attack or something like that to just kind of knock Erdogan down a little bit in the polls for the upcoming election, something like that. But it was an interesting story, and it looks like Erdogan is getting over whatever sickness he had. Maybe he was sick, though. I don't know. Maybe he really was sick, and maybe he did suffer a minor heart attack. But I've never heard of someone suffering like a minor event like that, like a heart attack, and then attending this celebration or going back to work the next morning. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's possible, but who knows? I thought I would relay that story out to everyone, and we'll find out in the next couple of days if we see Erdogan back back on the campaign trail and back to giving speeches and stuff like that, then we'll know that it was just a really bad bug. But if he does disappear, then maybe it is something more serious. We'll find out in the next couple of days. So let's see. I want to talk a bit about Tucker Carlson, and I want to talk about Biden and South Korea briefly, and then we could do our clown world. There was a story that I believe I'm looking for it right now, that the Washington Post published, where, yes, there it is, where they interviewed an Azov commander, and the commander said that the plan of Azov is to capture small villages inside of Russia so that they can exert leverage on Russia, and then maybe that will lead to the collapse of the Russian military or the collapse of the Putin government. A very bizarre story, but the Washington Post was reporting this. The interim commander of Ukraine's Azov brigade, the current incarnation of a former volunteer unit known for its neo-Nazi ideology, has said that Kiev's forces could capture Russian towns and use them to put pressure on Moscow. In an interview with the Washington Post, Bogdan Krotovich was asked about Ukraine's much-anticipated planned offensive against Russia. He was referring to the experience of Chechen militants in the mid-1990s who, quote, adopted a strategy of capturing small Russian towns to use as leverage to recover Russian-held areas during the military conflict in the southern Russian Republic. The Ukrainian fighter said his country may do the same, the Washington Post reported. He doesn't really mention this Chechen strategy in detail and how it worked or if it worked, but this is the Azov guys talking about crazy ideas to capture Russian villages because they think that this will give them some sort of victory. It's not so far off from the theory that maybe a part of this big spring offensive will happen in the direction of Belgorod and the north of Russia so that they can cause panic inside of Russia by invading Russia, some sort of Elensky invasion of Russia, and maybe this will give the collapse that they're hoping for. So it's not so far off from that thinking, but still a pretty crazy idea from this Azov guy. But what to expect? It doesn't surprise me that this is coming from these Azov crazies. So Tucker Carlson, he put out a video yesterday, and last I checked, it had something like 25 million views, or maybe more, 30 million views. And he put out a video about 2 minutes long, and he basically said that he's going to be doing something. That's what he was hinting at. That video was Tucker Carlson saying, "I haven't gone away, I'm not going away, and I'm cooking up something." And he made some interesting statements in this video. He said there are not many places left for reliable news. He said that. He said that there is a uniparty. He said suddenly the United States looks like a one-party state. He said that the American people are not being informed about real problems that are going on in the world, like war, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources. He said there's no real debate, there's no real information about real pressing issues that America needs to know about, needs to discuss. And he finished off his video by saying, "Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you hear the words, there is hope. See you soon." That's how he signed off. And Fox News, meanwhile, suffered a ratings collapse, a catastrophic drop in viewers, according to the Federalist's Sean Davis. Fox News suffered a catastrophic drop in viewers after ousting Tucker Carlson. In the 8 p.m. slot alone yesterday, Fox lost nearly 50% of total viewers and nearly 70% of viewers in demo compared to last Tuesday. Not good for Fox News, not good at all. By the way, when the news of Tucker's firing was announced, I went on to Twitter to check out his profile to see if he had something to say. He didn't announce anything at the time, but I took a screenshot, a screen grab of his profile and his bio, and his profile photo said Tucker Carlson Tonight. It still had his Tucker Carlson Tonight photo in his profile in the background. His bio read, and this is Tucker Carlson trolling, it read, Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, graduate of Harvard College and Yale Law School, frequent visitor to the Aspen Institute, fully jabbed, she, hers, Ukraine flag image. That was how Tucker changed his bio when it was announced that he was fired. Obviously, Tucker Carlson was signaling something. Anyway, yesterday I took a look at his profile to see if it was the same info on there, and he has changed his background image. Now it just says Tucker Carlson. It doesn't say Tucker Carlson Tonight, and he removed the bio text with his pronouns and the Ukraine flag and graduate of Harvard and Yale Law School. It's pretty creative stuff coming from Tucker Carlson. But anyway, I thought I would share that with everyone. Let's now do a couple of clown worlds. And actually, before I do the clown world, let's talk a bit about Biden's meeting with the president of South Korea. And this is an interesting meeting because the South Korean news agency, Yonhap, they went out of their way to say that Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son, who is now running for re-election, that Bidenopoulos and the president of the Republic of Korea, Yoon Suk-yeol, they did not discuss Ukraine. Or they briefly talked about Ukraine. They didn't talk about weapons or anything like that. They didn't talk about pressuring South Korea to send weapons to the Elensky regime or for South Korea to get involved in the conflict in Ukraine, which I found very interesting because I am positive that the Biden White House, all they talked about with South Korea was Ukraine because they're so obsessed and fixated on Ukraine. But I think that the South Korean news agency is trying to cover that up. And the reason I think they're trying to cover it up is because South Korea doesn't want to get involved in Ukraine, at least not on an overt level, because last week a South Korean official came out with a statement and said that South Korea is going to provide weapons to the Elensky regime. And a few hours later, Medvedev came out with a post in response to the South Korean official. And he said, oh, really? Well, if South Korea is going to provide weapons to the Elensky regime, well, then how about we provide some shiny new Iskander missiles to North Korea? That was pretty much what Medvedev said. And then the South Koreans walked back the statement of the official, like, instantly. They're like, no, he misspoke and he was speaking out of context. We're not going to get involved in the conflict in Ukraine, and we're not going to provide weapons to the Elensky regime, and that's that. So I think that the Biden White House absolutely talked to the South Korean president about Ukraine. I'll probably guess that 99% of their conversation was about getting weapons to the Elensky regime, but they want to make it appear that South Korea is not interested in getting involved in Ukraine, and there's no chance that South Korea will send weapons or ammunition to Ukraine, at least not on an overt level. And what they're looking to do is to try to find workarounds and try to find ways for South Korea to get ammunition to Ukraine, but, you know, through different channels, you know, selling ammunition to the United States, and then the United States takes the ammunition and gifts it to Ukraine or stuff like that. So I thought that was an interesting meeting between Biden and the president of South Korea. There were a bunch of gaffes between Biden and the South Korean president, actually just by Biden's gaffes that are all over Twitter and the interwebs. There's just too many for me to put up on this video, to be quite honest. But, you know, he's seeking re-election, folks. He is going to run for president in 2024. We may actually have 6 more years of Bidenopolis. My God, 6 more years of Bidenopolis. That's, oh boy. So one of the gaffes is actually my clown world. Oh, Argentina. This is interesting news via Reuters. The Argentina government is going to pay for Chinese imports in yuan rather than dollars. Argentina will start to pay for Chinese imports in yuan rather than dollars, the government announced Wednesday, a measure that aims to relieve the country's dwindling dollar reserves. In April, it aims to pay around $1 billion of Chinese imports in yuan instead of dollars, and thereafter, around $790 million of monthly imports will be paid in yuan, a government statement said. The decision aims to ease the outflow of dollars, Argentina's economy minister Sergio Massa said during an event following a meeting with the Chinese ambassador Zhu Zhaoli, as well as with companies from various sectors. Yep, can't have Tucker Carlson reporting about this story, Argentina paying for Chinese imports in yuan. Can't have Tucker Carlson reporting about this one. Anyway, how about that clown world? 2 clown worlds, to be honest. So one of the clown worlds from the Biden-South Korea meeting was when Biden was taking questions from reporters. And he kind of showed the papers that he holds as he's fielding these questions from reporters. He kind of gave everyone a peek as to what's written, what's printed on these papers. And what do we find out? Well, big surprise. Biden uses a cheat sheet showing the journalists questions in advance. Actually, the photo of the journalist, their name, their network, everything about the journalist, including the question that the journalist is going to throw Biden's way. And the clown world to this story is that Biden has the questions ready there in front of him that the journalist is going to ask. He probably has the answer to those questions also prepared, and he still messes up, and he still makes a mess of it. My God. 6 years of Biden. Oh, God. Oh, God, no. Man. Oh, man. All right. The Bild ran an article saying that the Elensky regime, they tried to assassinate Putin with drones a couple of days ago. 17 kilograms of explosives intended to kill Putin, according to the German newspaper. Bild writes that Ukrainian terrorists were preparing an attempt on the Russian president. So they tried to attack an industrial park with a drone 4 days before his arrival. A UJ-22 type drone was launched in Ukraine. This is Ukraine's most advanced drone with a range of up to 800 kilometers. Its target, a newly built industrial park near Moscow, 500 kilometers from Ukraine. Ukraine activist Yuri Romanenko said in a letter to Bild, last week our scouts received information about Putin's trip to the industrial park in Rudenevo. Our kamikaze drone took off and crashed near the industrial park. Yeah, that's their plan to take out Putin, is using a drone to hit an industrial park where Putin was believed to have been traveling towards. All right, that's the video, everybody. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, and Telegram. And go to the Duran shop. Pick up a hoodie. This is my Japan hoodie. Or pick up a t-shirt. This is my the Duran t-shirt. Look for us on Instagram. Our Duran shop Instagram page is set up and on Instagram, so check that out as well, and get 10% off. Use the code GOODDAY. And before I forget, I rarely mention this, but if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like this video, give it a thumbs down. If you like this video, comment down below and say, Alex, you're doing okay, man. And if you don't like this video, comment down below and say, Alex, you idiot. You idiot. Anyway, and also subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel, guys. Maybe I can add a couple of subscribers because I've been stuck. All right, take care.